Hazard versus risk. Following on from last week's discussion of risk assessment versus risk management, this week's article is about hazards versus risks. It's common to get the two concepts mixed up, and this can cause confusion, miscommunication, and frustration. A hazard is not the same as a risk. In food safety, a hazard is defined as something that can cause illness or injury if present in food. Hazards can be biological, Salmonella, physical, broken glass, or chemical, poisonous cleaning chemicals. Safety experts also sometimes include the hazard categories radiological and allergen hazards, although those can also fit within the chemical hazard category. An example of a radiological hazard in food is contamination with radioactive isotopes like cesium-137 and strontium-90 from fallout from the Chernobyl disaster of 1986. Allergen hazards are proteins from foods that are major human food allergens, for example peanuts, and are only considered to be hazards in foods where they are not expected to be present. A risk is a measure of potential damage or harm. Risks encompass both the probability of exposure to a harm-causing agent, a hazard, and the consequences of such exposure. In other words, a risk is a measure of the likelihood and severity of harm that could result from a hazard. Hazards are inherent properties of a physical environment or food material, while risks are the result of interactions between the hazard and people, products, and processes. Risks can be determined quantitatively using data such as the number of illnesses or injuries caused by a particular hazard and the prevalence of the hazard in foods, number of servings, mortality rates, hospitalisation rates, and costs of illnesses. Or risks can be determined qualitatively with a qualitative model. In such a model, the relationship between likelihood, severity, and risk is defined by a set of logic statements. For example, if a hazard is highly likely to occur and the consequences would be moderate, then the risk could be considered high. There is a picture of a qualitative model called a risk matrix in the post. Once the risk has been established by the risk assessor, the risk manager can decide what to do about it. In food safety and food fraud prevention, it's usual for mitigation processes or controls to be implemented only for hazards that pose significant risks.